Welcome to the Nonprofit Narrative Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Portnoy. In the ever-evolving world of nonprofit organizations, the ability to craft a compelling narrative and tell a captivating story can be the difference between achieving your mission and getting lost in the noise. In today's episode, we welcome six-time Primetime Emmy nominee writer Matt Beans. He's a storytelling expert with a treasure trove of experience in the entertainment industry. Matt joins us today to shed light on how nonprofits can utilize narrative and storytelling techniques to elevate your message and impact. Before we dive into the episode, though, here's some information on Matt. Matt's a renowned writer with a prolific television, animation, and entertainment career. With 6 Primetime Emmy nominations to his name and 1 win, Matt's impressive portfolio boasts work on popular shows like Robot Chicken, Trolls, and Dawn of the Croods. His extensive experience in storytelling makes Matt an ideal guest to discuss the application of narrative techniques in the nonprofit sector. There's no better way for a nonprofit to connect with audiences than through a compelling story, and Matt's expertise promises to provide invaluable insights into this practice. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan. I'm glad I could be here. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I am fascinated by the fact that every creative I've met here in LA has a different story to success. So can you give us a little background on you, where you're coming from, and how long have you been here, and how has LA been for you?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and kind of lived there, until college. So I was through undergrad. I went to a state school there, Towson University. And Towson is known for Michael Phelps grew up there. That's our big claim to fame. And the school has a little bit of a small, it's not a major, it's not a film major. It's like a concentration in the mass communication department, but they do actually produce films. And that was one of the few local schools that would allow you to do that. And so that's why I went there, and I did get to make some movies. And there was another guy I went to film school with who was I think he was in the class underneath me. And whenever I entered a movie filmmaking competition for the school, he would get first, and I was destined to get second. And that guy's name is Mike Flanagan, who went on to make the The Haunting of Hill House, and all those horror movies that are so big right now. Anyway, I went from Towson to Florida State for film school, and they have a real Hollywood conventional movie, educational program. And so once I did that, it was kind of whether I wanted it to be or not, all my chips were in on going to LA. Mm-hmm. And so in 2006, I moved out, and I've been here ever since. And how has it treated me? Ups and downs. Those first couple of years were pretty rough, pretty lonely, not almost entirely internal struggles, I had enough to pay rent and whatnot, but I had to live tight, and I had to live in some pretty sketchy places. But, just to make things work. But it was mostly just looking down the barrel of this could all not work. And then I've uprooted my life and come out here to pursue a dream, and it may not work out. And then what? Just looking out into the void of that day in, day out. It's pretty challenging. What ended up working out for me was that the first thing was I got a good job. I got a good assistant job. A woman I went to film school with, Susan, she put my name on the stack of resumes that were being submitted for to be the assistant to Seth Green, the actor and producer.
Yeah.
And his partner, Matt Senreich, those guys make Robot Chicken. And it was in its second season then, just starting its second season. And they told me after the interview that they were the person that I was the person they disliked the least. Now they said that once I had the job, kind of a little haha, wink, wink, but I think it's kind of true because everybody came in, shirt, tie, maybe approaching it super professional, and they're much more laid back. And so it was interviews was really hard for them to tell whether they're going to whether you're going to work with them or not. but I was the one they disliked the least. And
then you were there for how long?
3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
So I was their assistant for 3.5 years, and we got along great. Just had a really good rapport. They trusted me. And what was nice was that there was like an open enough relationship that I could, over time, here and there, sort of slip them a little thing that I was working on. And eventually it got to the point where they said, and this is so unbelievable, they said, hey, look, we're getting ready for another season. You've been here for 3 years. We know you want to write, and we really don't want to lose our assistant. So they said, how about we create a situation where you could write for us from your assistant desk. Then we know we have you as our assistant. You get to take the next step forward. And they said, you'll get a little bit of a raise, but the big thing is that you'll get a guaranteed credit on every episode for this season.
Boom.
Whether you get 0 sketches on or 100, you get the same, you get the credit. They were like a non-union show at the time, so they could make up rules that they wanted to and hire their assistant to be a writer. That was all kosher. So of course I said yes. And I ended up doing pretty well on that first season. So then that's first season that I wrote on. When the next season came around, they brought me on as a staff writer. And then everything that I've been able to do since then has pretty much like, you can follow the like path from that first Robot Chicken writer's room to just about any job that I've gotten since then, because, all those writers end up going to other writers' rooms or running their own shows, and then they needed writers. And that's how I got some momentum going. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Wow. It is just really funny how it's just like, that's actually very traditionally kind of a traditional story, whereas it's not like, and then I was in and I met Barbara Walters and her hairstylist connected me.
Yeah. I think that the non-traditional part of it was that I didn't ask them for the job. They asked me if I wanted the job.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't like, I wasn't even thinking I was going to write on Robot Chicken. It's such a dark show, or at least it can be. Mm-hmm. And so it just didn't seem like a great fit for me. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even on my radar. The fact that they came to me and said, would you like this opportunity was sort of surprising. And that's the thing that like most people think when you come out, you've got to like beg people and like fight tooth and nail in order and like put yourself in front of people all the time and tell them exactly, and I think that is often true. It just wasn't the case in my situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I find it's there's so much like, I don't know. Most of the things I've heard about this is how you do it are exactly not how you do it.
Yeah.
For just about everything out here. Just about like, that's what you do if you want to tick everybody off.
Right.
And as opposed to like number one rule is don't be a jerk. So just kind of a wild thing there. All right. Well, if I can move a little bit, get a little personal. So we met what, about a year ago?
Yeah, I think it's been longer.
Maybe a little longer.
Year and a half almost.
Year and a half. Yeah. Just coming out of the COVID deal.
Yeah.
Deal. Well, one of the things that the audience probably doesn't know is that I wrote a pilot and I was trying to get it figured out. And one of the things that's great is Matt actually gave me a lot of feedback on it, which was cool because I thought, hey, man, if you could just read this, that'd be great. But truthfully, nobody wants to read anybody else's pilot, right? I mean, nobody does. Nobody at all. So I was surprised when Matt came back with a pen. And he absolutely destroyed my pilot, which was good in the best way. That's exactly the kind of feedback you want. But one of the things that destroyed me is I thought I was better at this than I was. Sure. And that was very upsetting. But the other option is, what am I going to do? Stop? So that there was that. But the thing that I think is wild is just how much it revealed how good you are at the questions of like, what's going on in the scene? Why do we need this? What's happening? And that was a very big like exclamation point to me. So when you approach like a scene, What is it that you're thinking about to have happen? Like, some people talk about the seduction versus the what kind of convincing is happening in the scene and what's going to happen. Do you tend to think about things like that when you're plotting along, or what do you tend to think about?
Well, first of all, lots of stuff in there. I appreciate the compliment. That's really nice. What do I think about? I think that I probably think more about what the audience is expecting at every moment, like trying to put myself in the position of someone who has, no idea what my concept is, or what I love about this project, or even who the main character is, just an audience member with a history of seeing other TV. So there might be some familiarity with tropes and devices and stuff, but otherwise a blank slate, and then working from that assumption, that they don't know what you're going for. So if that's the case, you have to be as honest as you can from that position about what you're communicating with every scene. I haven't even heard of the seduction before. That sounds really interesting. What is he wrote Social Network, and Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin talks about objective and obstacle, or objective and the things that are getting in that person's way, or maybe it's intention. I don't really think so much about it in that way. I think you've asked me a question that I don't have an immediate answer for. Like, what are the basic building blocks of a scene? I guess it's all. I've never labeled it before. I think that's why it's
okay.
tough.
Yeah, this is the thing that I find super interesting about talking about this with you, because I come from a place of like everything is structure. And the funny thing to me I feel like you just talk about finesse. Like if everything else is just building blocks and Legos, and you're like, what about this bucket of water? And then you just like pour it all. I mean, it's just like, and it fills in. And I just find that very, very interesting.
And before you move on, I can talk a little bit about it. I just didn't have a label.
Yeah.
I would say what I'm asking myself going into every scene is I'm trying to root myself in whichever character this is about. Each scene is going to be driven from a certain point of view, and it's whichever character you're writing it from. And they have some want, and they're going after that thing. And then, it is just the story of like what things are stopping them. And in a horror, it's going to be something scary. In a comedy, it's going to be the common imperfections of life that keep stumbling them up, or the mistakes that they keep causing themselves, the unexpected thing that gets in their way. I pretty much write from that, and try not to jump around too much. Just stay in that point of view and keep moving forward. That's what I do.
Great. One of the things that I thought was very interesting about that you had said to me was that when we were talking about TV and we talked about being slick as writers and being clever or being obvious, and you were like, just be as obvious as you can, and how important that is. Why do you think that is?
I think that it's really hard to communicate. It's really difficult to communicate. What I told you came from a classmate of mine at Florida State. He had just finished making his second film, I think. And afterwards, we were talking about what the experience was like. And he said, I thought I came here to learn how to be super subtle. But actually, the lesson I'm learning over and over again is just be as clear as you possibly can, and that really registered for me. And I remembered being a young fan of movies, and I kept really being sucked in, drawn in by filmmakers who would make such a subtle move, such a something that seemed like, oh, half the audience would have missed that. And it's like, I guarantee you that filmmaker is not trying to lose anybody. They're not trying to be above anybody's head. They want everyone to get the experience. What they're trying to do is be incredibly precise. And they're also working within this limitation, this limited art form where you do it, you're communicating through image and through experience, through behavior. Dialogue, yes, but nobody is usually saying exactly what they're thinking. It's all coming through this filter of like human behavior, right? And that is by nature going to be subtle. If you wanted to be really direct and beat people over the head, you'd write prose, and you'd write really bad prose. You'd say, I am Matt Beans, an author, and this is my idea. And now I'm telling you, the audience, you just completely call it all out. Well, this medium doesn't do that. Since you're working through such a so many layers of filter, before you can just come out and say exactly what you're trying to say, you want to find the most clear ways to get that across. And then, of course, there's going to be a certain threshold at which you're doing something super cliche, and yeah, it might be clear, but you've seen it 1,000 times, so it's lost its impact, or you are being too obvious, and so you're breaking the illusion of reality. It's like, this doesn't feel like people's behavior anymore. Mm-hmm. It feels like a movie, and I should be lost and trapped in the illusion of it all. I think the mistake that can get made, and the thing that I was pointing out in those instances in your story was, that this is a moment where you need to really work on being clear and not assume that the audience is going to track and really lock into what you're communicating, because it's not clear yet. I'm still, I deal with that all the time. It's such a hard thing to do. Right now I'm working on a sitcom spec, and I've been wrestling with the first scene because I want to set up the concepts of the show in a scene, and I have to keep working on boiling down to its essence. What is this about? What is this series actually about? What's the core idea? And I should be able to communicate that in like one quick sentence, because if you're going to communicate through a scene, an image, a character behavior, it has to be so dead simple that the audience gets it really, really fast, and it just clicks. It's hard. It's really hard.
Really hard. Yeah. Dang. Okay. So you've written a lot of TV, and how do you bust it down to a sentence to be very clear about things in a 30-minute time frame? You've got to set up. Are you setting up A and B stories, or is it basically just a story? I don't know exactly how specifically. I think of the Trolls front. Like, was that a show aimed more at children? Does that mean you are less savvy on the story front, or are you just as savvy?
I mean, for one, Trolls isn't even 30 minutes. It's 11 minutes.
Oh, it's 11 minutes.
Each episode is 11 minutes. And then Robot Chicken, way shorter. You can sometimes write a sketch that's 15, 20 seconds long. I think you still have to know story. And I think you have to know it even better. You're just telling. So it sort of varies. It's like, I think the Trolls stories were pretty sophisticated for an 11-minute show. It's a big high concept world. You have to explain a lot about how the Trolls world works. The audience can't just always assume that they know what trolls do, and like, trolls don't have money, so how do they get things? You have to like hold the audience's hand sometimes to define this world. Mm-hmm. If it was a gritty, grounded, drama set in our world, you might not have to explain as much, So Trolls has that against it. And then our stories have a lot of twists and turns, and so, yeah, they can be pretty sophisticated. And the way that you get away with that is by having more on the nose dialogue, people saying a little bit more what they feel, sometimes saying things out loud when there might not be, if you really think about it. A person in a normal situation probably wouldn't say what they're going to do that day, but it certainly helps get a scene going in a kid's animated show. And if the tone allows for it, if the tone is, accepting enough of that, no one cares. It's just like, oh, that's fun and it works. And I totally buy it.
Totally.
You just wouldn't accept it in a different tone.
Right.
So if you've got to write a drama, first of all, thankfully, you usually have an hour, it's a TV drama. And also you're going to try to keep your stories a little bit more simple, like they can have twists and turns, but you're not going to have all this time to be explaining everything to your audience all the time, because they're not going to accept people talking constantly, and explaining everything as they go. So how do we write that short? Well, a lot of it's tone, and then, just like getting as economical as possible, not wasting any time. Every line has to move the story forward and tell jokes. And
yeah. I mean, how many jokes are you having per page, kind of thing? Because I know that's always a big thing when they talk about like sitcoms. Is it like
I took our lead on Trolls from what my experience was like in Robot Chicken, and in Robot Chicken, typically what you're shooting for is a joke every other line.
Holy crud!
Yeah, so your setup scene might take maybe an additional line or two to get going.
Wow.
But from that point on, and it's not like hard and fast, but you can usually feel it. If you've gone 4 lines and there's no joke, you're going to get noted on that. Yeah.
Fun stuff for the room. You and I have talked a lot about nonprofit work and working with nonprofits and marketing and storytelling. And what advice would you give to a nonprofit as they're working on their story and building it out and trying to communicate to both a new audience, but also to cultivate their current audience that they've had with them? What would you say?
I would start by asking what will resonate with someone who doesn't know what I know. I'm saying not what Matt Beans knows, but whoever's starting a nonprofit, to the people out there trying to get a nonprofit going or already has one and is thinking about how to captivate with their story. There has to be some resonant idea that compelled you, and that there has to be something somewhat universal about that idea that other people can connect to. And I think that, that's the essence of your story. It's like, whether it's like providing water to people who don't have it, or saving the environment, or, whatever the case may be. I mean, those are big enough examples as is. There's something in that everybody can connect to, even people who don't recycle, or waste water, or just, they have super busy lives and tons of kids and they don't have a whole lot of bandwidth to do anything specific about those issues. But there has to be something emotional about your idea that they can connect to. And that's where I would start. And I would do that well before the bells and whistles of like, how many people you've helped, or how many people you plan on helping, or how many countries that you have already, broken ground on, or broken ground in, or how sophisticated your program is. Like, it has to start with like, this is why we care. And I think this is why you will care. Yeah. I mean, that's how we told our stories too. Sometimes it would happen in reverse, like on Trolls. There'd be a whole part of the process where the writers had to come up with log lines of new ideas for stories, story threads. Yeah. And sometimes it's just like, a really not at all fleshed out, just like, it just feels like Poppy would have fun opening a bounce house, or something like that. And, we might all agree, yeah, that does feel right, but we're not really ready to break that story yet, because we haven't unpacked any of the big questions about like, why does Poppy care? Like, why is it so important for her to build a bounce house? Why does it matter? And similarly, if you're going to answer that question, you have to remember someone's going to watch this. So you also have to ask, why do they care? So somehow, even though I've never wanted to open a bounce house or done it, there has to be something in why Poppy's doing it that I get, and that might be she's got a family member, and they're moving away, and their last big wish before the last Troll Village was to break the bounce house record, something like that. Wow. It's like, oh, well, I have friends that I care about who have dreams. And sometimes I wish I could help them make their dreams come true, So I get why Poppy's doing it. I get why I would be invested in that. And now we can start breaking the story. We have the character, we have her driving motivation and the emotional resonance there, and we can go. And I think it would be the same if you're pitching your nonprofit too, why it is emotionally compelling.
Now, is there a nonprofit that you've seen doing, and I'm springing this on you, but is there a nonprofit that you've seen marketing that you were like, I love that. I just think it. Could you tell us what that is?
Charity Water. And I think it's for the same reasons. I mean, there's something so simple about water. Like you get why it's important, right? And then you can paint a picture of like what life would be like if you didn't have access to clean water, right? And once you paint that picture, any listener, anyone who is listening to your idea, that idea is like, oh, that would be incredibly painful and frustrating and difficult, and it would make life a hell, and I'm moved to think that people in the world don't have something that I absolutely take for granted, and then on top of that, they're just so smart the way that they go about fundraising and how they've removed their overhead budget from their general fundraising budget. Mm-hmm. So they break that all down. And now, so as a result, since they raise their overhead separately, when they post on their website, we're looking for donations, or when they have their big fundraising programs or whatever, they can say, we can guarantee to all of you that 100% of your money will go toward giving water to people who don't have it. 100%.
Yeah.
Because the other stuff has already been covered by a separate budget, and they've already talked to rich fundraisers about doing that,
Right.
And so in the end, financially, it's like in the end, they're getting money from different sources. They are paying for overhead. Every nonprofit has to do that. It's just that they're so smart to separate them so that they can tell me 100% of my money is going where I want it to go. Another emotional tick. It's like they've broken through all my skepticism, and they've made me a guarantee that I haven't seen any other nonprofit do. I'm sure they do, but I haven't seen that before.
I don't know. I don't. That's really still pretty unique.
Yeah. It's so smart.
Yeah. It really is.
So, yeah, that's one for sure.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for being here and telling us all about the stuff.
Yeah.
Breakdowns. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank Matt for being on the show, and thank you for listening. My hope is that you're inspired and equipped with the tools to craft narratives that can resonate deeply with yourself and also with your audience. If you've got a specific question that you want to get on the show for us to talk about, you can just email me, dan@portnoymedia.com, and I will do my best to get that taken care of as fast as possible, because, it's no good to do all this stuff and it doesn't actually help anybody. So please send in your questions. I will take it from there. There'll be some show notes with some links and things you can check out. Thanks again for listening. My name's Dan Portnoy. Have a good one and be safe.